Hi, my name is Louis Arouse. I'm the Director of Performance with Optimize Primate. I teach high-value business professionals that deal with constant increasing stressors how to develop what I consider to be the ultimate competitive advantage, optimize performance and maximum resilience so they can build the business they want without destroying the life they have. In this presentation, you're going to learn about the top 3 dangerous trends threatening your business performance. Whether you're in business for yourself or a corporate executive, your ability to adapt and stay ahead of trends ultimately determines your level of success. The trends we're going to cover in this presentation negatively impact your company regardless of its size or financial security. I'm also going to introduce you to the best ways to overcome these trends because if you're not killing it in business, your business may be killing you. Let's go over the areas we'll cover in this presentation. First, we'll look at the current business environment. Next, we'll go over the top 3 dangerous trends. And we'll finish with the critical skills executives must master. Just a quick disclaimer before we get started. First, I'm not a doctor or a lawyer, so talk to one before you make any changes. What I'm presenting is for informational purposes only, and Optimize Primate does not diagnose or treat any diseases. Let's take a look at our current business environment. There are about 28 million small businesses in the U.S. Thousands of new products are being launched every year, but less than 50% of the population can even remember them. Employees are more and more dissatisfied with their work environment and their company leadership. Majority of a company's profits are going to healthcare costs, and if this trend continues, it will outweigh profits. Every 3 minutes a company goes out of business, and yet, with all of that, every day, more and more people are stepping up and starting their own business. This forces you to continuously out-innovate and outperform these disruptive competitors trying to take over your industry. No longer can you just remain idle. If your business isn't moving forward, it's moving backwards. But whatever your industry, there are 3 dangerous trends you must overcome to have optimal business performance. Let's check out the first one. Dangerous trend number 1 is the inability to deal with chronic stressors. Here are some of the most common stressors affecting businesses. Meeting stress. And of course, the higher up you are in the company, the more meetings you have to deal with. Financial stress, from having to make payroll every month, closing sales, looking for more capital to grow. And even the stress of maintaining the balance of business and home life. Now, this is a lot of stress, and there's even more that I haven't mentioned. And yet, with all of this, even when business is going bad, if you ask someone, how's business doing? They say, business is doing great. But why do they do this? Because they have to keep pushing forward. There's a huge amount of pressure on a founder or an executive to never show weakness. There are many people counting on you to be the leader in all internal and external situations. The world around you could be falling down, and most of the time it is when you're running a company, but you have to put up with the stress and keep going, because any indication of weakness is an opportunity for competitors. But it doesn't matter if you're being chased by a tiger, about to have a fight go really, really bad, or your boss wants to know when you'll have that report ready. Your biology reacts the same way when you're stressed. But there's a difference between executives, athletes, and our hunter-gatherer ancestors. Our ancestors weren't constantly being chased by tigers, and in sports, they understand the benefits of recovery and off-seasons. But the business world, on the other hand, runs all day, every day, because you know that there's someone right behind you trying to take away everything you're working to build. So the stress you deal with is called chronic stress. When you're under stress, though, your body responds in certain ways. Your pupils dilate so you can see more, your heart beats faster to move more blood, your muscles tense up, ready to fight or run away, and there are also changes that happen inside your brain. Now, this is an overly simplified model of the brain, and I'm going to actually simplify it even more in order to introduce you to the executive team of You Incorporated. These areas here consist of the oldest and strongest parts of the brain, evolutionarily speaking. I consider them You Inc.'s board of directors, and they're responsible for the day-to-day process operations from logistics and communications to temperature control and maintenance. And this part is the newer area of the brain, commonly known as the executive functions. This is where your personality comes from, and this is why I consider it the CEO, and it's responsible for all of the goals, logic, planning, and motivation of You Inc. Now, the board of directors has been around for millions of years, and they know how to do their jobs extremely well. And they have actually majority control over the operations of You Inc. See, when you are overloaded with stress or in danger, the executive board of directors will divert resources away from non-vital processes like reasoning, compassion, logic, and move them towards processes that keep you out of danger. However, the world we live in has changed drastically in the last 100 years, and the board of directors hasn't adapted to these new stressors, so it's constantly overreacting to threats and taking control away from the CEO, which can be a serious problem because if you ask any business consultant or leadership coach, what are the most important leadership qualities, they'll mention things like creativity, influence, dedication, and fairness, all of which are part of the executive functions in the brain, and they're suppressed when you're under stress. Now, so far, I've only talked about mental and emotional stressors, but the board of directors also reacts to the wrong types of food, overworking, pathogens and toxicants, and exposure to electromagnetic radiation. So there's a whole world of stress you must constantly overcome to effectively build your business. Now, at this point, there are some questions that you must ask yourself. Do you plan on being in business for a long time? Do you need leadership qualities to do business? Does your income depend on your performance level? And do you want to outpace your competition? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then let's move on to dangerous trend number 2, which is not managing your assets and resources. Now, I don't know what kind of business you're in, but there are some basic asset management concepts I want to make sure we're familiar with. Let's take a look at the basic equation for wealth. Revenue minus expenses equals profit. For me, this equation shows it's not just about how much you make, it's also about how much you keep that determines the amount of profit you make. The more profit you make, the more you can grow your business. But profit doesn't necessarily equal wealth. That equation looks like this. Profit times time equals wealth. So you can either make a lot of profit in a short amount of time to be wealthy, or keep making small profits over a long period of time. So let's take a look at how this applies in business. Let's say you're running a business that makes $1 million in revenue. But to generate that revenue, your business has $750,000 in expenses. So your profit is about $250,000 a year. It's not bad. That might be comfortable living for most. But what if you didn't run your business so smoothly, didn't track your expenses, made bad investments, and hired the wrong people? Your expenses have now increased to $950,000. That means your profits have dropped to $50,000. And at this point, you're probably pretty upset since you were making $250,000 before. Now, how would most businesses react? They would probably start looking for ways to increase revenue. And that definitely would bring profits back to where they were. But most business consultants will tell you that putting good money into a broken system is not sustainable in the long term. Instead, if you start tracking your spending, optimize your processes, and hire the right people, your business expenses will go back down. And now you're making even more money than you were before. But not all business finances are this simple. Let's take a look at one more scenario. There are some businesses out there that are definitely making revenue, but they're actually spending more than they're making. So you're actually losing money every year. This number is very important to investors, and it's known as burn rate. Now, how can a company stay in business when it's losing money? Well, if they have a large cash reserve, say $1 million in inheritance or from an investor, at their current burn rate, this company can last for 5 years. It's known as the zero cash date. This number is also very important to investors because this is how long a company can survive before it goes bankrupt. But what happens to most businesses when they have a large lump sum of cash? They spend it. Giant launch parties, company t-shirts, and swag. And you can recover from a lot of dumb mistakes if you have enough reserves to cover up your losses. Now, if their expenses go up and their burn rate goes up, that means that now their expenses are up to $600,000, and this company can only last for 18 months before they go bankrupt. Now, I hope you agree that these are some important numbers to know in your business. After all, could you run your business without knowing how much money you have in the bank or how much you're spending? Would you be able to run that business well? So now that we're on the same page with basic financial management, let's look at one example of how not controlling your biological assets can destroy your company. Here's a chart of the average office worker's daily energy output. They come into work with a lot of energy ready to take on the day, and their energy starts to drop throughout the morning as they work. But it picks right back up after lunch, and then it starts dropping again around 2 p.m. until they reach for something to keep them going just so they can make it to the end of the day. Does this pattern look familiar to you? Well, this pattern has been shown to have some serious effects outside of the work environment as well. In 2011, researchers followed 8 judges, and they tracked their favorable rulings across 1,000 cases. What they noticed was that as the day went on, their favorable ratings dropped to almost 0 and then picked back up after lunch and again after a short break. The energy levels of these judges correlated with their decision making. So, if you get nothing else out of this presentation, the next time you have to go to court, make sure you see the judge as early as possible or just after a break. But what these researchers saw was that energy levels, when they're low, your performance drops. You feel tired and unproductive, you get cranky, your headaches start forming, and you can make bad decisions. Low energy destroys productivity. Now, in order to prevent this, many health advocates will recommend eating 6 small meals throughout the day to keep your energy levels up. But there are a few problems with this. First, who has time to eat 6 meals a day? Second, there's no scientific evidence showing that 6 meals a day has any long-term health or performance benefit. And third, the reason nutritionists started recommending 6 meals a day was to help maintain blood sugar levels. But maintaining blood sugar levels has some serious problems, because when you're hungry, blood sugar levels are low, your willpower drops, and the board of directors will seek out the easiest options available. And in the world that we live in, the easiest options means eating sugar and things that quickly turn into sugar, which is going to spike your blood sugar levels, and the board of directors will order insulin production to transport sugar into cells for immediate work. Dopamine levels are going to rise in the brain, which they make you feel good and make you want to learn more, and that's some of the effects that we want in business. But sugar gets used up really quickly inside the cells, so blood sugar levels will crash again, which means you're going to get hungry, which now you're in this cycle. But there are some serious problems with this. You Inc. can only deal with so much sugar at once, so the board of directors orders the remaining sugar to be processed into triglycerides and put away in energy containers called fat cells. Besides storing energy, each fat cell also stores and produces waste products that cause inflammation in your body. And you can consider inflammation just as you would expenses. So the more fat you have, the more inflammation you have. But sugar by itself also increases inflammation through a process called advanced glycation end products. This is what gives a steak its crust and also turns bread brown. It tastes great, but it does damage. So inflammation leads to malfunctions in departments throughout you Inc. These malfunctions cause higher levels of stress and raise cortisol, which creates even more sugar through a process called gluconeogenesis, which now feeds back into the cycle. Now, you might be saying, okay, I get how sugar can make me fat, but how is this going to destroy my business? Well, one of those malfunctioning hormones is insulin, which we said is used to transport sugar into cells. In order to keep insulin in check, you produce an insulin-degrading enzyme, but it has another job, to clear out plaque buildup inside your brain. When there's too much insulin circulating throughout you Inc., and more enzymes are used to clear out insulin, there's less available to clear out the plaque from your brain, which is one of the reasons Alzheimer's disease is now being called type 3 diabetes. And the plaque buildup also triggers even more inflammation in the brain. Now let's take a closer look at what's actually happening inside the brain. Inside your brain, there are microtubules that deliver nutrients and flush away waste products in the brain, such as plaque. Well, those microtubules are held together by special proteins. But when there's too much inflammation, those proteins will clump together instead of being used to stabilize the microtubules, and they start to fall apart, slowly destroying the framework of the brain. Here's what a normal brain looks like compared to an Alzheimer's brain. Imagine if your executive office resources and budget shrank by 15 to 35%. Would this limit your ability to produce results? Of course, Alzheimer's is an extreme example of the long-term effect of what can happen to the executive suite of you Inc. But in the short term, the effects in business are known as presenteeism. This is when you and your team are underperforming but not sick enough to stay home, and experiencing brain fog, depression, aches, forgetfulness, and aggression. These kind of problems cost U.S. businesses between $150 to $250 billion annually. So right there, you have at least 150 billion reasons to make sure you and your team maintain optimal performance. Now at this point, many people will ask, but there has to be a system that repairs this, right? There's definitely a cleaning system built inside you Inc. The problem is that they can't do their job while you're still up late, working extra hours, and eating at the wrong time, or stressed out. Imagine if you hired a cleaning crew for your offices, but you never let them actually do their work. Your office would end up looking like this. Which is a great analogy for the metabolic chaos going inside you Inc. if you are not managing it correctly. So what steps should the optimized executive take at this point? First, make the decision to operate you Inc. the same way you would a successful business. Maximize your opportunities for recovery and repair, and develop strategies to ensure you have peak energy levels with minimal inflammation costs. Which brings us to dangerous trend number 3, not controlling biological costs. Although you Inc. must incur some expenses for operations, there are some expenses that are just too much of a cost for you Inc. We're going to look at a few of them right now. First is the cost of artificial light at night, especially blue lights. It disrupts you Inc.'s internal clocks. It stimulates cortisol production, which we mentioned before that cortisol generates even more sugar. And blue light also suppresses melatonin, which is the main sleep hormone. Another cost is sitting all day. Sitting is an expense of the modern work life, but sitting all day causes certain muscles to tighten up while others get weaker. This has become known as gluteal amnesia or butt lamination. Sitting also lowers production of the main fat enzyme called lipase. Blood flow gets impaired while you're sitting, which can lead to deep vein thrombosis and possibly stroke. Modern digital devices such as laptops and cell phones have transformed how we do business today, but the cost of using these devices is becoming more and more clear every day. One example of the cost to you Inc. is from wireless technology built into these devices. In one study, researchers strapped cell phones on each side of a volunteer and monitored the glucose metabolism in their brain. During the control, both cell phones were turned off. Then the cell phone on the right side was turned on. And as you can see, the brain activity near the cell phones increased, meaning more glucose was being required in those areas closest to the cell phone. And we've discussed the cost of glucose to you Inc.'s performance. And of course, there's also the cost from eating the wrong foods that you Inc. was not designed to work with. What are the next steps for the optimized executive? First, figure out which stressors cause the most damage to you Inc. and either eliminate those stressors or learn how to mitigate the damage. Okay, so enough about the problems. Let's look at what we can do to turn these dangerous trends into business dominance. The first critical skill is learning how to track you Inc.'s assets. Now these next slides should look familiar. You Inc. has to make a certain amount of energy to function and do what you want in life. But in order to generate that function, you must spend some of that energy on biological costs and inflammation to maintain life. Whatever energy is left over, let's call performance. Some might call it willpower. But what if you don't run you Inc. so smoothly? Maybe you're not controlling your biological costs, and maybe you made some bad investments in the past, such as staying indoors all day, not eating the right things, over-exercising, staying up late. All of these increase the inflammation that you Inc. must pay for, which means your performance is lowered, making it harder for you to wake up in the morning. You're tired all day. You may get angry at things really easily or lose focus at critical times. Do you think that might affect your leadership skills and productivity? When this happens, many people start looking to stimulants to increase their energy. But adding stimulants to a system that's dealing with high levels of inflammation only gives you unstable performance. Instead, by focusing on reducing inflammation that you Inc. deals with and using strategies to increase energy, you can develop optimal performance. But for some, it's not this simple, because we know some people who they obviously are producing energy because they're alive, but they deal with some traumatic event causing more inflammation than they have the energy to deal with, and they experience some level of reduced function caused by cellular damage. But how can these people still be alive? Well, we've each inherited a different level of vital reserve from our parents in the form of telomeres, stem cells, and our ability to maintain an electrical charge. Some of us got more, some of us got less. And if you inherited a large vital reserve, under the current rate of cellular damage, a person might reasonably expect to live for about 85 years. Now, you can take a lot of risks for a long time when you've got a strong vital reserve. But as that inflammation keeps increasing over time and becomes chronic, cellular damage will increase, meaning you no longer have reduced function, you can end up with loss of function. And your vital reserve now can only last for 45 years instead of 85 years. This means the equation for biological wealth looks like this. Energy minus inflammation equals performance. and performance times time equals longevity. As you read this formula, you probably have already recognized that the two variables you can control are energy levels and inflammation. Now, because of the time that we have, we're only going to be focusing on tracking and reducing the costs of inflammation. Tracking key performance indicators is very important for business because it tells you if your business is on the right track for success, and if it's not, where to focus your attention to keep making improvements. You probably track KPI for monthly sales numbers, and if you've got a website, chances are that you know how many unique visitors are coming to your site. Many people track the temperature inside their offices so they can save a few dollars on heating and electricity bills. And people probably know more about their car's performance than they do about their own biological performance. The way most people track the costs of inflammation inside U Inc. is by tracking their symptoms, such as feeling tired, feeling wired, allergies, depression, headaches, joint pains, digestive issues, and weight gain. Now, all of these are important indicators of inflammation, but symptoms are actually lagging indicators, and here's why. Your brain communicates with the rest of your body through blood, hormones, and electrical energy in order to produce function. And if everything is working right, you've got 100% function with no pain. This means you are in a state of ease, or what's known as homeostasis. This is a pretty good framework for optimal performance. But this isn't how we see most people these days, is it? No, we see many people with indigestion, headaches, exhaustion. In other words, they've got symptoms, which means they're not in homeostasis, and they're not at ease. They're actually in dis-ease, and they don't have 100% normal function. They've got malfunctions. Now, typically, when people focus on getting rid of symptoms, they look for relief. First, they try pills, and if pills don't work, surgery is usually offered. But as I said, symptoms are lagging indicators. They show up after the problem has already started, and they don't tell you how or why the problem started. Symptoms are caused by stressors, such as mental and emotional stressors, physical stressors, or even chemical bioenergetic stressors, which is the area I specialize in. By removing these stressors, we can return function to the different departments inside U Inc., bringing you back to a state of ease, which will eliminate symptoms and return you to a state of optimal performance. Instead of using lagging indicators, leading indicators better identify malfunctions inside U Inc. before they become performance and productivity problems in your real company. Here are just some of the leading indicator tests I might suggest to figure out what areas need to be worked on to optimize performance. If you want to learn more about any of these, please contact me and I'd be happy to talk about them. So what are the next steps for the optimized executives? First, get a baseline evaluation to determine the current state of U Inc. Determine key performance indicators that you want to monitor, and implement strategies for continuous optimization. And finally, track yourself every 30 to 90 days, just the same way that you have quarterly reports. Critical step number 2 is reducing the cost of inflammation to U Inc. Just like there's many different costs for different businesses, the same holds true for U Inc. However, I want to give you some solutions to just a few of these costs that can deliver some great results. First is controlling blue light exposure. This is a free app for your computer called F.Lux. It tracks sunrise and sunset times where you are, and when the sun sets, it will turn your screen from blue to red to reduce the amount of blue light that you're exposed to at night. But your laptop and mobile devices aren't the only sources of blue light around you, and you may not be able to control all of them. So instead, there are glasses available that will help you control blue light. These glasses are useful during the day to block excessive blue light when you're stuck indoors in front of a computer and under fluorescent lights. And these are glasses that block out most, if not all, of the blue light at night from reaching your eyes. As I mentioned before, U Inc.'s board of directors have not been trained for the new environment we live in. This device measures your heart rate variability. A healthy, relaxed person has a high heart rate variability, which means that the amount of time between each heartbeat is different with each beat. Low heart rate variability is a sign of intense stress. When the board of directors in your head is under stress, your heart develops an inflexible, unchanging beat. When you have low heart rate variability, a red light will appear on this device. Your job is to do everything possible to make the light turn green while following the device's guidance. Spending at least 10 minutes every day working on your heart rate variability will retrain your board of directors not to overreact, so you can stay in control longer. As useful as it is to reduce stress and retrain your brain, There are so many stressors that you Inc. must deal with. Wouldn't it be great, though, if you could just get away from it all, even for an hour? Well, this is an isolation tank, more commonly known as flotation therapy, and it may be the answer for you. The isolation tank is approximately 5 feet wide by 7 feet long, light-proof, and is filled with 12 inches of water. The water has 800 to 1,000 pounds of magnesium salt dissolved in it, and is kept at 96 degrees Fahrenheit. As soon as you put in earplugs, close the door, and lie down in the water, you will float effortlessly in complete darkness. In this state, brain activity for maintaining posture, regulating temperatures, processing audio and visual input is reduced to a minimum. Natural endorphins are released, reducing pain, blood vessels dilate, reducing blood pressure, and maximizing blood flow, allowing the board of directors to direct resources to areas that need repair. Also, one of the main minerals used up when you're under stress is magnesium. The magnesium in the water is absorbed through the skin to correct magnesium deficiencies. And finally, brain scans show that when devoid of external stimuli, the brain shifts into a state known as transient hypofrontality, which is one of the most altered states in the human brain associated with enhanced ability for focus, creativity, and concentration. These are just a few of the technologies I would recommend for executive performance. Here are the next steps for the optimized executive. Pick one of these technologies and test how they improve your performance. Write down how you feel now and then notice how you feel 1 week after trying these technologies. Which brings us to the last critical skill, the unspoken part of your job description that you agreed to when you started your business or working for your company. And this is important to realize because it's lonely at the top, and business is only getting more difficult. In the last 2 decades, the success rate has changed for executives, and research shows that they're not lasting as long. Because execs who think that they can handle it themselves are much more likely to burn out, and they can seriously affect a company's performance along the way. One of the reasons why those execs burn out so quickly is because they mainly focus on growing their financial assets. This is so important to them, they even hire business consultants to optimize their business performance. Recently, some executives have realized that their emotional assets flow into and determine the size of their financial assets, so they work with life coaches and leadership coaches to better understand their emotions to become better leaders. But just working on emotions is a rate-limiting step, because as many will tell you, financial success doesn't mean more happiness, and we've lost some of our best business minds who realize that too late. The way I see it, there's a third asset you must focus on to significantly improve your chance of success: your biological assets. And working with someone to help you manage your biological assets can help you develop on-demand, optimal performance and maximize your recovery during times of intense business activity, improving your brain's ability to work at optimal levels so you can be a better leader who quickly adapts to the trends threatening your business, or better yet, innovate your own trends. The best part is that you can invest some of your profits to continuously improving and optimizing your biological performance as time goes on. Which brings me to the unspoken part of your job description, which states you agree to have on-demand optimal performance, otherwise someone younger, stronger, and smarter will take over your role and everything you've built. And you can be sure that your clients, investors, board of directors, or even your bosses will definitely keep up their part of the agreement. The question is, are you keeping up your part of the agreement? So what are the next steps for the optimized executive? First, consult with a wellness or performance specialist to determine the areas of you Inc. to improve first. Find someone who will work with you as a coach and not just sell you supplements. Make sure that they use labs to track your progress. And make sure they understand that there's more to optimization than just eating less and exercising more. You need to be able to recover and adapt. Which reminds me of what Charles Darwin once said. It's not the strongest or the smartest of the species that survive, but the ones most responsive to change, which is true. But in this time of constant stress and disruptive trends, I prefer a quote from former General Electric CEO Jack Welch, who said, "Change before you have to." Now, if you agree with Jack, then the question you should be asking yourself is, what would my business look like with optimized performance? If you were to close your eyes and even imagine, say, 6 months or even 5 years from now, you and your team working together with boundless energy, laser focus, and maximum creativity available to develop new and innovative products or services, while effectively recovering from any stress thrown at you. As you enjoy your success at the top, I want you to stop and look back on today as being the start of it all. So the question is, when do you want to start? Now, if you're serious about developing this optimized performance for you and your team, and you want to invest in yourself, then I'm ready to invest in you first. I'd like you to go to optimizeprimate.com/executive. There, you can schedule a one-on-one strategy session with me, where I will develop for you a customized strategy to eliminate the number one performance problem you think is keeping you from getting the results you should be producing. Whether it's jet lag, loss of focus, migraines, lack of energy, weight gain, sleep problems, or whatever it is, I want to help you, Inc., eliminate that problem and be one step closer to optimized performance. And with that, I'd like to thank you for watching, and I hope to see you on the other side of optimal.